Any Long Islander can tell you that one of the worst things to put up with when commuting is New York traffic.
All three of the crossings are doing well as you make your way down towards Queens, but once you get there, heavy delays on the LIE from the BQE.
Traffic is an absolute blight on workers, residents, and visitors to the city. According to a 2013 report by INRIX, New York City ranked number 5 in their list of cities with the worst traffic, with commuters spending an average of 53 hours sitting behind the wheel. It's reasons like this that many Long Island commuters who work in the city generally rely on the Long Island Railroad.
I obviously prefer taking that than driving into Manhattan every day.
I do not commute to work, but I do take it periodically to get into the city, or sometimes I'll take it to JFK. Not having to deal with the traffic on Long Island, which can be pretty tough.
Serving the length of Long Island from Montauk to New York City, the Long Island Railroad is one of the busiest commuter railways in the United States, and one of the oldest to still operate under its original name. The railroad spans across 11 lines and over 594 miles of track. It is responsible for the commute of 81,753,411 passengers every year, and consists of over 6,000 employees who work tirelessly around the clock to make sure all the lines are functioning properly. Unfortunately, this doesn't mean that the railroad isn't without its problems. While most casual riders seem to have little to no problem with taking the train,
I've taken it a couple of times and I had no issues. I enjoy the Long Island Railroad.
I never really have a problem taking the railroad. I never am stuck or delayed or anything like that. But like I said, I only come in twice a month, so I couldn't talk for a regular commuter that, commutes every day.
Veteran commuters who have been riding for more than 10 years, however, tell a different story.
There are hiccups. I mean, there's delays. You can get stuck in New York. You can get stuck out here.
Sometimes at late at night, there's like the rowdier kids that come late at night.
There's been a few times when you're stopped for like 40 minutes or so, and it'd be nice to know what exactly is going on.
According to the railroad's 2015 operating report, on-time performance had dropped to a record low of 91.6%, the lowest it's ever been since 2000. This and many other problems like it resulted in many angry commuters taking to Twitter to voice their displeasure using the hashtag #WeDeserveBetter. This uproar raised many complaints about canceled trains, sanitary conditions, and ticket prices, among other things. To provide some relief, Governor Cuomo made a proposal for a third track to be installed between Floral Park and Hicksville, although following up on that proposal could take some time. So it's plain to see that the Long Island Railroad is an imperfect system. But how many of these problems are really within their control? Do commuters have a right to be angry? Or is the Long Island Railroad genuinely trying to do all it can? We reached out to an anonymous spokesman for answers to some of the more frequent complaints.
My biggest complaint is when it's bad, it's really bad. And I think, there are certain things that can't be avoided, such as, say, the recent blizzard.
Ann Stoltz has been commuting out of Amityville 5 days a week for the past 34 years, and while she's had many grievances with the railroad in those 34 years, one of the most reoccurring issues she's had to deal with has been delays and canceled combos.
So the Long Island Railroad, if they have an issue, they typically need to limit the number of trains that are traveling on the rails at a certain point in time until they get the situation cleaned up. And so typically what that means is they'll cancel trains periodically and then combine them with another train. They're not putting extra cars on the train, so they're actually combining 2 full trains onto one, and then it stops everywhere. So it's very crowded, and it's a local that takes then over an hour to travel.
According to the railroad, the trains that are routinely combined during periods of delay are chosen because they allow a return to normal service as rapidly as possible, and even provide service to as many people in the interim as possible. To elaborate, Amityville is served by the Babylon branch of the Long Island Railroad. A look at the Babylon timetable reveals frequent service with trains during the PM rush hour departing Penn Station every few minutes. The spokesman seems to be saying that this method of canceling and combining trains maintains service to the most passengers possible until the disruption is resolved. And seeing as those service disruptions are inevitable, it's better to have inconvenient service than no service at all. One place the railroad has admitted needs improvement, however, is in its communication of these inevitable service disruptions.
They don't keep you, abreast of a situation. If something's happening, they don't give you, they don't notify you. They keep you in your seat. Oh, the train will be going shortly or something, but if something happened, I was on a train one time and an incident happened where a guy got hit by a train, and we were all on the train for like 45 minutes before we started getting notified of what's happening.
If I knew that was happening, then I would probably stay at work and then wait for either the 6:46 or the 7:30. You know, I think there are certain things are unavoidable, but you know, I don't think it's clear what the situation is or how long it will be before it's resolved.
The railroad has been taking great strides to improve communication, stating that the Long Island Railroad has increased its efforts considerably in the last several years to get better and more timely information to its customers. We have expanded our public information office and incorporated email and smartphone apps to convey information as quickly as possible. Even with those advancements, disruptions sometimes occur without warning, develop quickly, and are dealt with as quickly as possible. Harry Smith, another frequent commuter who has been taking the railroad to his job in Manhattan for the past 18 years, has been paying on a monthly basis for a commuter ticket that he says might not be what it's worth.
The cost is an issue. I mean, it's, you know, I guess dollar for dollar, it's probably cheaper than driving when you have to add in parking in the city and gas and wear and tear on a vehicle, but still, it's $377 a month for me, which is close, I can't do the math, it's over $3,000 a year, you know, so that takes a hit. You know, I wouldn't mind 18 times 3,000 back in my pocket, you know.
According to the MTA's official fare table for the railroad, all stations are divided into different fare zones. The price of a monthly ticket varies from zone to zone based on how far that zone is from the city. Those stations within zones closer to New York tend to be much less expensive than those farther away. Mr. Smith commutes out of Patchogue, which is in the third farthest zone from the city. According to the railroad, while this is a considerable expense, it seems more reasonable when considered on a mileage and frequency basis. A commuter from Ronkonkoma to Penn Station, working 5 days each week, would travel more than 2,000 miles in a month. This equates to a cost per mile of about 18 cents per mile. This is cheaper than driving for most people when gas, tolls, and parking are included. In addition, a monthly Long Island Railroad ticket costs approximately 50% less than the cost of a month's worth of peak round tickets. Plus, the ticket can be used for an unlimited number of times by its owner. That means it can be used on weekends and holidays for leisure purposes. In short, the value of a monthly ticket is based purely off of miles traveled. While $377 a month may seem expensive at first, with the amount of miles Mr. Smith travels in 1 month, it would be no different than if he purchased a $377 plane ticket from Minnesota to Mexico City. Finally, perhaps the most frequently occurring problem among commuters doesn't seem to come in the form of maintenance issues or delays, but with fellow passengers.
People have to go out to their fancy homes in the Hamptons and they take up all the seats with their pet carriers and their beach balls.
Crowded trains, sometimes it's other people, like, you know, people that are drinking and stuff, get into fights.
A person was playing a Seinfeld episode without headphones, and I was sitting like 5 rows ahead of this person, and I could hear clearly what the episode was. And so I said to the conductor, could you please ask that guy playing that Seinfeld episode to either lower the volume or put speakers on, headphones on. He wouldn't do it.
You look a little stressed.
Oh, I'm stressed.
There's no bigger nuisance to put up with during commute than fellow commuters. According to the railroad, the Long Island Railroad does add extra trains and more cars where it can on popular routes during times of heavy demand. However, this can be challenging because we have a finite number of cars. Generally, we have to remove cars from trains on other branches to build up the Montauk branch in the summer. We also ask customers to be considerate of other passengers and not place luggage and other belongings on adjacent seats. They also go on to say that good manners are learned at home, and the Long Island Railroad takes an educational approach with regard to courtesy. Conductors make announcements encouraging passengers to be courteous of those around them, and many will intervene with customers who are less thoughtful. A recent public information campaign included onboard posters showing customer examples of good and bad behavior on trains. Now, this isn't exactly the most effective of solutions in dealing with bad behavior, but it's important to know that this is something else that isn't fully within their control. The conductors are dealing with rude and sometimes unlawful behavior by passengers, and must decide when to intervene and confront those passengers, as a way of avoiding unnecessary confrontation. And that's all in addition to doing their regular jobs as conductors. Even the railroad spokesman acknowledges that the Long Island Railroad isn't perfect and could be improved. He claims that they are constantly striving to make those improvements, but as the busiest commuter railroad in the United States, and the only one that operates 24/7, the number of trips taken every day without delay or interruption is a remarkable feat to say the least. 2015 statistics show more than 330,000 trips taken on a typical weekday. The Long Island Railroad makes it possible for people to work in Manhattan, but live and raise their family in houses and communities that they likely couldn't afford living in the 5 boroughs of New York City. Any travel is subject to delay for breakdowns, human error, and weather conditions. But rail is statistically safer than driving, as the railroad hasn't suffered a single passenger fatality in almost 10 years, a record that the Long Island Expressway can never hope to match.